Today, we are a country divided, and we have a president doing everything in his power to make it that way and keep us that way.
Many of us have been deeply concerned about the current path. Continuing to follow that path will have terrible consequences for America's soul.
Donald Trump has no clue how to run a business, let alone an economy. For me, the choice is simple. I'm with Joe.
Those are just a few of the Republicans who spoke at the Democratic National Convention over the past few days. They came out in support of Joe Biden. Reaction now from the White House with Kellyanne Conway, counselor to the president. Kellyanne, good morning. Welcome. Thanks for being here. So what is the president's reaction this morning to seeing the sight of multiple Republicans that made speeches last night in support of Joe Biden against President Trump?
I think it's basically shrugged-shouldered more than raised eyebrows. I respect Secretary Powell deeply, but he hasn't supported the Republican nominee for president since 2004. The president he served, George W. Bush, he endorsed Barack Obama in 2008. So he against John McCain, let's remind ourselves. I think the question, Sandra, is what do the rank and file Republicans do? Are they sticking with President Trump? He's got very high approval ratings in the Republican Party, and I saw even the latest CNN poll shows a migration from Biden to President Trump among men, among independents, and among 35 to 64-year-olds, a very important group age-wise. Many of them have children who are trying to get back to school safely, and many of them have elderly relatives that they're worried about. But also, you know, when I hear some of the messaging, it doesn't surprise me, but I also don't understand why Joe Biden, who has been in Washington for 47 years, has so many people from the swamp sort of trying to lift him up and show how he's the outsider. He's the guy that you need to run the White House. He's got the experience. I hear the name Donald Trump more than I hear the name Joe Biden at Joe Biden's convention, which tells you all you need to know. And I thought the most remarkable part of the evening, apart from Joe Biden, who seems like a very nice person, I thought the most remarkable part of the evening was AOC making her 1 minute count by endorsing, you know, actually nominating Bernie Sanders for president. The AOC, Bernie, Elizabeth Warren, they've got a lot of power over the platform, and they will have a ton of power over a Biden presidency.
To be clear, that's been reported as a lack of endorsement on her part for Joe Biden. She has asked for clarification from other news outlets this morning, not us, saying that that wasn't the case. She didn't mention Joe Biden's name last night, but she does support Joe Biden. She put that out there this morning. So then how does President Trump seize on that? What he's seeing, whether it was Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the message from Bernie Sanders the other night, the president's heading to Joe Biden's hometown. He's counter-messaging all week. How is he adapting, changing his messaging as we go into next week?
Well, his message is the progress report of his first term, which you've seen him do in 3 or 4 states just this week. And again, as you say, he'll be in Pennsylvania tomorrow. And then next week is our time. It's our time to show through the American people what I call the RPI, the real people impact. But for Donald Trump and Mike Pence being in this White House, these people would not have jobs. They would not have the PPP money that they needed to keep their small business not just surviving but thriving. They would not have remdesivir or convalescent blood plasma to help mitigate the effects of the coronavirus on our way to eradicating it through Operation Warp Speed and the vaccines that are being developed. The president also is going to talk about the vision for the future, why 4 more years is needed to continue and expand upon the economic successes, his role as the healthcare president, what he's done on trade deals with China, with Korea, with Mexico.
So you bring that up,
Canada.
Kellyanne. You bring that up, and that became a big moment last night when the former Secretary of State, John Kerry, called the president's foreign policy a blooper reel of breakups with allies, love letters to dictators. Watch a bit of this, and I'll get your response.
When this president goes overseas, it isn't a goodwill mission, it's a blooper reel. He breaks up with our allies and writes love letters to dictators. America deserves a president who is looked up to, not laughed at.
How's the president responding to that?
Oh, this one's so easy. You know, John Kerry reminds us that losers never really are winners. He lost to President Bush as a Democratic nominee in 2004 and has since really presided over as Secretary of State some of the worst deals like the Iran, the JCPOA, which this president is taking us out of. You know, John Kerry and Joe Biden never even had the courage to take out Soleimani and al-Baghdadi and other terrorists. They never had the courage to try to go to North Korea and denuclearize it. North Korea, according to President Barack Obama, was going to be, quote, the biggest issue President-elect Trump had to face. And he took that seriously to the point where he's trying to denuclearize the area. They never did a UAE-Israeli deal like this president did on the same week they're criticizing him. Sandra, that's the first deal of its kind in 26 years, an Arab country in Israel where they are exchanging embassies and ambassadors, and also to benefit the people of those regions, to have security, to have trade, for example, and other assets exchanged. So this is the president who is transforming our role across the world because he's for peace and prosperity. John Kerry also was caught on a phone, you remember, earlier this year saying, oh, I think I may have to step in and be the nominee. It was in February. He was worried about Joe Biden's performance. The idea that the people who are vouching for Joe Biden at the Joe Biden convention, where Donald Trump's name is mentioned more than Joe Biden, is folly, because they've known him for years, and yet he had to get through 26 other Democrats to become the nominee. They didn't want him.
All right. So you're responding to their attacks on the president's foreign policy. I'm sure we'll hear more from the president coming up on that this week and next week. Meanwhile, I want to ask you about the coronavirus response on the part of the administration, because that is coming up a lot from the Biden team, from Democrats at the convention this week. This is the latest NBC Wall Street Journal polling on America's response to the coronavirus has been. Those that answered successful, 36%. Unsuccessful, 61%. Most Americans do see still a very big problem on our hands when it comes to the handling of the virus. How does the president cater his message, to voters who are still living in this pandemic, who still have college kids who are getting sent home because there's the spread of this disease, Notre Dame just having to shut its doors for in-class learning? So what is the message from the president as he begins the convention next week to those who are still greatly feeling the effects economically and more from this virus?
Sure. Well, the president has also retaken the podium in the press briefing room to talk about this every chance he gets, and he'll do that again today at 5 o'clock. Sandra, I'm sure everybody will tune in. Until we have vaccines, until we've totally eradicated the virus, we are trying to mitigate the effects of this dual financial and medical crisis. We have the therapeutics like remdesivir, convalescent blood plasma. This president has already surged trillions of dollars in direct relief to the states and to 80 million Americans.
But Kellyanne, I'm short on time, but to bring it to today, I mean, these universities,
well,
Michigan State, you've got Notre Dame following in the footsteps of UNC Chapel Hill. They started school, and then they quickly saw the spread of this virus, clusters popping up. What is the president specifically saying about that?
Well, the president will address that today if he's asked, but the fact is that these schools are also warning the students to please pay attention to what the CDC and our task force, our doctors and our president have said time and again: wear masks, socially distance, practice hygiene. They're not doing that. They showed many of them out at parties that had nothing to do with the curriculum. So we need everybody to remain vigilant. Our doctors have said again and again that if you just take these modest steps, we will prevent the spread of this. At the same time, this president just a week ago here with the vice president had a forum where they're talking about safely reopening our schools, which include the college campuses. You know, 100% of our 75 million students, kindergarten through college, left school between the first and third weeks of March, Sandra. So they were in lockdown. Many of them want to return. But the fact is that they also have to listen to local and state guidelines. This president continues to talk about, until we have a vaccine, we're not going to eradicate the virus, but we're trying to mitigate it. And that's why we also need a fourth package to go through that has school choice now, that has additional money for PPP, that is helping people to get back on their feet economically. But I think it's so important that the president is providing information to the public, not confrontation with the press, in these brief briefings, so that he can also take those tough questions from the press. One last thing. I didn't hear Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, John Kerry, anybody talk about this virus in a meaningful, solutions-based way for months while we were here around the clock. If they've got a good idea, Sandra, they shouldn't be sitting on it till November 4th.
He's got
Help
a plan.
Their country
Joe
now.
Biden's got a plan. It's on his campaign website.
Yeah,
it's
sure.
there. You can read through it. They ask for a lot more funding.
I read through it. It's not much of a plan. Well, we've done 70 million tests here, and we're testing in nursing homes. We're testing on campuses as they want. We're testing. Testing is available. Point of care test, rapid test, longer test. So I read his plan. It doesn't make any sense. Thank you.
All right. No, appreciate you coming on. Come back soon. We're out of time. Thanks, Kellyanne.